Apache woman discovers amazing connection. The cowboy's response transformed her life forever. Maya crouched in the dim light of her grandmother's old house, her fingers brushing against the surface of the ancient chest. Dust motes danced in the air as she struggled against the weight of her life, bills piling up, family responsibilities choking her dreams. Inside the chest, nestled among quilts and forgotten relics, lay an old family journal. With trembling hands she opened it. The pages held stories of resilience, of ancestors who fought against injustice. Most captivating was the tale of Jack, a legendary cowboy who dared to stand against racial inequality. Inspiration flared within her, but the haunting echo of her daily grind tugged her back into despair. Every day at the diner felt like a relentless cycle. Shifts blended together, the clattering of plates and muffled conversations only heightening her internal tumult. History was her passion, but pursuing a degree seemed frivolous against the backdrop of her family's struggling existence. Could she truly chase this dream? What would her parents say? The thought of their disappointed faces twisted inside her like a knife. The more she read that journal, the more conflicting emotions flooded her. Maya craved the recognition she desired, yet felt an innate pressure to prioritize her family's needs. What if the pursuit of her education meant neglecting her responsibility to them? Would they see her as selfish? The weight of expectations suffocated her, and she often hesitated at critical moments. Was it wrong to want more for herself amidst their hardship? The day of her first college class arrived wrapped in trepidation. The skeptical voices of her professors replayed in her mind, mocking her dreams as they pushed past her insecurities. Words bubbled inside her, but remained trapped behind her lips. A heavy feeling lodged in her throat. Each doubting glance from her peers compounded her anxiety, leaving her feeling invisible, yet so exposed. It wasn't just about her heritage. They were questioning her right to tell her story, to exist in a space that felt foreign and hostile. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Maya faced the crushing doubts, an unexpected connection formed that night at the diner. Jack walked in, rugged and thoughtful, an embodiment of the stories alive in her journal. Their conversation sparked an inspiring exchange, revealing a shared desire to combat the inequities ingrained in their community. He became her mentor, igniting her dwindling confidence. Yet stirring emotions morphed into a psychological tug-of-war when he challenged her, seeking authenticity behind her ambition. And just as Maya began gaining traction, she discovered the academic competition that could answer her quest for recognition. It should have felt exhilarating, but the stakes felt impossibly high. The rival student who doubted her origins and intent gnawed at her resolve. Maya stood at the edge, the night before the competition, twisting her insides. Fear and determination collided, illuminating an impossible dichotomy. Would she fight for her truth, or conform to garner validation? The argument with Jack incited a storm, their bond fraying as their values clashed. In the electric moment of conflict, clarity washed over her. Who was she really, and what did her heritage symbolize? With the competition looming like a storm cloud, she felt the pressure clamp down. Would she betray her family's authenticity to survive in an arena built on skepticism? As she prepared to step forward, the weight of her decision coiled tightly inside her. Would she defend her roots, or betray them for the sake of her dreams? The competition day dawned, shrouded in an ominous fog that paralleled the tumult within Maya. She stood before the mirror in her cramped apartment, scrutinizing her reflection. The shroud of uncertainty draped over her shoulders like a weighted cloak. Each inhale felt labored as she questioned the thin line between ambition and her ancestral roots. Who was she, trapped within the narratives of others? Maya had spent countless nights wrestling with her thoughts, spurred on by Jack's words igniting a glimmer of ambition. Yet self-doubt dogged her footsteps. She replayed her confrontation with him, the accusatory look in his eyes, as if challenging her very existence in a space that felt so unfamiliar. Could she expect anyone to understand her experiences when she struggled to articulate them herself? What if her efforts crumbled under the pressure, swept away like sand in the wind? As she drove to the campus, the world outside transformed into a blur of colors. It was overwhelming. The bustling streets mirrored her anxiety, a constant reminder of the stakes piling against her. The more she thought of Jack and their frayed connection, the more urgent her feelings became. She needed to prove him wrong and, perhaps more importantly, prove herself right. Arriving at the venue, she stepped into a dimly lit auditorium filled with students, some buzzing with excitement, others shrouded in a veil of quiet determination. As she navigated her way through the crowd, she locked eyes with her rival Sarah, her expression a mixture of disdain and schadenfreude. Their gazes clashed, a duel of wills without words. Sarah embodied everything Maya feared, a manifestation of her insecurities, someone who would effortlessly elicit the approval of judges she so longed to impress. As the competition began, Maya fought to regain centering thoughts. Critical opportunities whizzed by her, while anxiety wove through her psyche. Each competitor was an echo of a history she found herself battling against. Women and men laid bare their truths, and as she listened, Maya felt herself slip further into silence. Where was her voice amidst all this noise? When it was finally her turn, the spotlight felt scorching, amplifying every tremor of her hesitation. She stood before a panel of judges, their expressions unreadable, and felt herself teeter on the precipice of self-doubt. Moments stretched, filled with silence heavy enough to suffocate her. And then, she did something unexpected. Maya drew from the well of her heritage, daring to reclaim the stories of her ancestors she had read in her grandmother's journal. It surged through her, Jack's spirit igniting an unquenchable fire inside. With renewed conviction, she spoke not just about the injustices she faced, but the strength buried within those tales of resilience. With each word, she uncoupled herself from her insecurities and embraced an authenticity she had once feared, exposing the profound layers of her identity. However, she could see the rising skepticism in Sarah's eyes, a rebuke stronger than any spoken word. Was her vulnerability enough to challenge the disdain? As she paused, searching for her next words, she sensed the impending storm. A palpable wave of both courage and doubt surged within. Maya finished her presentation with determination, yet the battle for validation wasn't just her words, but the emerging confrontation with herself. Doubts lingered, holding tight to her mind, the lingering feeling that perhaps her truth was not resonating as she had hoped. Had she fought fiercely enough for herself, or had she laid bare her soul only to invite further judgment? As the applause washed over her, unsettling questions gnawed at her confidence. Jack's face materialized in her thoughts. Would he have been proud of her? She needed closure, not just from the competition but with the mounting pressure of expectations. Could authenticity truly coexist with that weight? Stepping off the stage, Maya felt both exhilarated and lost. The decisions unfolding before her reached deeper than the contest alone. Standing on that precipice, with everything in the balance, she faced the ultimate question. Was she prepared to embrace her entire identity, or would the remnants of fear hold her back? The taste of victory at her fingertips, she felt the familiar pull of trepidation. The real contest lay ahead, a confrontation with her fears and the very heart of who she was becoming. As she exited the stage, a haunting realization gripped her. Perhaps this was only the beginning. The shadows of uncertainty may soon morph into her most pressing challenge yet. Maya stepped into the bustling hallway, the reverberations of applause still echoing in her ears. Yet the taste of triumph was overshadowed by doubt. Students around her celebrated their successes, exchanging congratulatory words. But the weight of their chatter felt like a storm brewing inside her mind. She had stood courageously on that stage and shared her story, but had she truly connected, or had her words been swallowed by the atmosphere of competition? As she made her way to the exits, her heart raced with a converging cocktail of emotions, excitement, anxiety, and the gnawing loneliness that came with self-doubt. She had glimpsed who she was meant to be, yet the fear of returning to her old self was ever present. Jack's words flickered in her mind. You can't keep running from who you are. The challenge loomed over her like an unyielding shadow. Outside, the sun broke through the fog, its rays bathing the campus in vibrant colors. Yet Maya felt colorless. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the ground beneath her was both solid and quaking at the same time. What now? She had faced an audience and bared her soul, but could she continue to embody that authenticity once the applause faded? She plopped down on a bench and checked her messages. A much-anticipated one from Jack caught her eye, his words an anchor amidst the chaos swirling within her. "I saw your presentation. You were incredible, but I know you can dig even deeper. This isn't just about the contest, it's about you." His praise both buoyed her spirits and weighed them down, pushing her into a deeper introspection. The duality of satisfaction and skepticism surged within her. With a renewed sense of urgency, Maya pulled out her grandmother's journal. The pages felt like an uncharted map, revealing untraveled stories of resilience, courage, and strength. What if she lost herself in those tales instead of merely borrowing strength? Perhaps this was the direction she needed to take, delving deeper, not just recounting the chronicles of her ancestors, but truly understanding how each letter intertwined with her identity. As she read through passages, the beauty of storytelling unfurled before her. She felt each character's heart, every joy and every pain reverberating in her soul. They weren't just stories, they were lifelines. An idea ignited within her. She could transform her presentation into a project that explored not just her culture, but the shared narratives of those who felt unheard. The complexities, the nuances, their intertwined fates could enliven her next steps. Yet, a rising voice inside her clashed against this burgeoning ambition. Could she, a newcomer in this academic arena, dare to engage in such a project? What if she failed to deliver? Maya bit her lip, ambivalence gripping her once more. Was this her calling, or just another wave of naive excitement destined to crash before it rolled forward? Maya tucked the journal back into her bag, determination swelling within her as she formulated a strategy. To find her place in this world of equalizers, she needed to confront Sarah and her own insecurities head-on. That would be the crucible of her evolution, the moment she faced her fears not as bystanders, but as intrinsic facets of her being. She rose from the bench, resolute, her heart and mind aligned towards a singular purpose. Maya would seek out Sarah and articulate not only the battle she faced, but the revelations she had gained. It was time for that confrontation, the fear of her truth against the fear of being silenced. The stakes had elevated, and the ground beneath her was no longer knotted with trepidation. Stepping away from the crowd, she felt the world tilt as she took her first confident steps toward the inevitable confrontation. The moment had come to face not just her rival, but the lingering shadows of her past. Would she emerge as the woman she always knew she could be, or would she remain bound by her fears? With breath pressed tightly in her chest, Maya prepared herself for the coming storm. As Maya navigated through the throng of students, anticipation pulsed through her veins. Each heartbeat reminded her of her resolve to confront Sarah, that sharp voice of doubt that had crept into her consciousness. Her mind whirred as she envisioned the approaching encounter. What would she say? How could she articulate everything she had uncovered in herself? The wisdom gleaned not only from her journey on stage, but also through her grandmother's stories. Finding Sarah in a quiet alcove near the art department provided Maya with a fleeting moment of relief. The backdrop of creative expression was far removed from her turmoil. Yet Sarah was already in deep conversation with a group of peers, her laughter piercing through Maya's armor of confidence. It felt oddly reminiscent of her own insecurities, the fear of being outshined, of remaining invisible amidst a vibrant tapestry of personalities. Maya hesitated, her resolve momentarily buckling. What if her words faltered? What if Sarah, dismissive as always, brushed off her insights? The cacophony of doubt surged, but beneath it, a flicker of determination ignited once more. She had to speak out. She had to articulate her worth. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward and edged closer to Sarah. "Can we talk for a moment?" The question came out steadier than she felt, catching Sarah's attention and the eyes of her listeners. They shifted their focus, and an awkward silence ensued, a stark contrast to the earlier merriment. Sarah raised an eyebrow, a combination of surprise and intrigue shadowing her features. "What's up?" This moment mattered. It could alter the trajectory of her journey. The thoughts she had strained against began to crystallize into purpose. "I wanted to talk about the presentation and your feedback. I've been reflecting on everything, and it isn't just about winning for me anymore. It's about sharing stories that matter, stories that we often overlook. Each word was a stepping stone, a deliberate choice paving the way for authenticity. Sarah sighed, a hint of disdain flickering in her eyes. But who cares about those stories? This is about competition. It's about being the best. Her nonchalance stung, but it also fueled a fire inside Maya. This was not merely a rivalry. It was an opportunity to confront her own worth and beliefs. No, Maya pressed, deeper conviction punctuating her tone. It's about connecting with our experiences, understanding the value of where we come from. My grandmother's stories, they've shaped who I am. I want to dive into that depth, to explore what it means for all of us. I want to show that there's strength in vulnerability, in truth. Sarah's posture shifted subtly, her bravado wavering. And you think you can do that? There was an edge in her voice, a challenge that resonated with Maya's resolve. Yes, she affirmed, voice steady and unwavering. I believe I can, and it's not just for me, it's for everyone who feels sidelined. Maya felt the rush of adrenaline course through her, the conviction illuminating a dark path that had lain hidden until now. The atmosphere thickened as both women locked eyes, Maya's heart racing not with fear, but with an intoxicating blend of courage and ambition. Yet she could sense it, the shifting dynamics, the unresolved tension lingering in the air. All right, Sarah conceded, her tone begrudgingly respectful. If you think you can pull it off, let's see you try. With that she turned back to her group, laughter bubbling back to life as Maya stood, pulse pounding with the weight of what had just transpired. As the exhilaration settled, Maya felt new layers of possibility unfurling within her. This wasn't just about confronting a rival. It was about articulating her identity and the shared narratives that bridged the gaps between them. In standing her ground, she inadvertently stepped into a realm where fears and aspirations danced together. Emerging from the encounter, her path was clearer, yet the challenge lingered. Could she not only uncover her own hidden depths, but also guide others to find theirs? The very notion ignited a fire in her chest, overwhelming yet thrilling. With her grandmother's journal clutched tightly, she forged ahead, ready to transform her newfound clarity into tangible impact. Yet whispers of uncertainty hovered in the corners of her mind. Could this be enough? What did truly connecting with others entail? The answers loomed ahead, just out of reach, awaiting her next move. This was only the beginning of a journey filled with unknowns, but one thing was certain. Maya was no longer prepared to remain silent. What awaited her on this path of discovery would shape not only her narrative, but those she intended to uplift along the way. The next challenge awaited, and it beckoned her to rise to the occasion. But as she took her next steps, questions surfaced. Who else was ready to join her on this quest for shared stories and unseen connections? Maya stepped out of the alcove, determined and invigorated, yet a lingering curiosity nibbled at her resolve. As the vibrant campus buzzed around her, she couldn't shake the thought of Sarah and their heated exchange. What had begun as confrontation with a rival had transformed into an awakening, a river of potential flowing through her veins, igniting the courage to not only challenge herself, but to challenge deeply rooted perceptions of connection. With her grandmother's journal as her compass, Maya sought solace in its pages while perched on a bench surrounded by blossoming trees. Their delicate petals drifted down like whispers of encouragement, motivating her to dig deeper into her own reflections. The stories penned by her grandmother held more than just words. They were experiences woven into the fabric of their family heritage. As she read through the delicate script, Maya's mind drifted toward the narratives of others, those whom she had often overlooked, stifled by her own insecurities. It dawned on her that stories were not just personal. They formed a collective symphony of resilience and shared humanity. What if she gathered these untold tales, transformed them into a platform, and invited others to join her on this journey of connection? The idea made her heart race, and the intrigue intertwined with a seedling of anxiety. Planning began to consume her thoughts. What if she held a forum or an open mic event where people could share their own stories? But self-doubt threatened to creep back in. Would anyone show up? Would they take her seriously? Taking a slow, measured breath, she recognized these intrusive whispers for what they were, echoes of the past that should not dictate her present or future. Daring to push past these uncertainties, Maya envisioned crafting a space that nurtured authenticity, a gathering that celebrated diverse experiences. She would use the learned insights from her grandmother to shape her intent, embracing vulnerability, fostering community, and reigniting the lost art of storytelling. "If I want to elevate these voices, I need to be brave enough to raise my own," she whispered to herself, a mantra of conviction against the backdrop of self-doubt. Eager yet apprehensive, she reached for her phone and began to draft a message to a few friends who had always participated in her artistic ventures, knowing they carried stories of their own. "Hey everyone, I have this idea for an open mic focused on sharing personal stories. I'd love your thoughts," she typed, her fingers trembling slightly. After a moment's hesitation, she pressed send, an act of vulnerability that felt monumental. Maya animatedly imagined the possibilities, stories that could inspire, shock, connect. Yet, as excitement surged, a layer of fear unfurled inside her. What if they rejected her idea? What if they trivialized her dreams? Internal conflict roared, yet beneath it was a soothing undertone of familiarity. This was the same tension she felt each time she stepped onto the stage. As the day lurched forward and the sun sank low on the horizon, she received one response, then another, then another. Each reply was a warm affirmation rippling through her trepidation. The support was palpable, layering encouragement atop her initial doubts like a protective shield. Right there, in this small moment, Maya realized the potency of collaboration, the strength that could arise from shared experience and collective expression. With every passing message, she was not simply inviting others. She was building her own community, her own family of story weavers. Yet, alongside the thrill of connection, a heavy weight settled on her shoulders. Could she truly guide this endeavor without spiraling back into self-doubt? Could she be the catalyst for change, not only in her life but in the lives of those she hoped to uplift? This awakening was remarkable, but the road ahead felt as daunting as it was invigorating. As she returned home, visions of what this gathering might become danced in her mind. Yet, undeniably, a voice whispered at the back of her consciousness, "Would anyone listen?" Maya's journey was only just beginning. Scales tipped between hope and fear. She would soon find that the responses she received could lead her to another unexpected confrontation, perhaps even one that rooted deeper than she could have ever anticipated. The upcoming days bore the promise of discovery, and with them she sensed a looming challenge ahead, one that would invite her to embrace her own worth fully. The next step was clear, yet uncertainty loomed. Just as she was beginning to step confidently, she couldn't ignore the nagging question. What role would fear play in this new chapter of her life? Days rolled into a blur as Maya emerged from her initial excitement into frantic preparation. Every corner of her mind brimmed with ideas. What themes should they focus on? How could she create a welcoming space for all varieties of stories? Each possibility sparked new inspiration, unraveling within her a distinct brand of determination that sharpened with every passing moment. But there was one detail she couldn't shake, the looming fear of inadequacy. With every plan she sketched out in her notebook, the doubt crept higher. The unshakable voice at the back of her consciousness grew louder amid the flurry of creativity. She had coaxed others into vulnerability before, but this time it was her own worth that felt alarmingly exposed. Maya knew she had to confront it head-on. Sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor, she painted a picture of the gathering that teased her imagination. She imagined a circle filled with faces, each illuminated by a shared glow of understanding, yet doubts began to swirl like a storm. Would anyone truly connect to what I'm trying to do? She questioned aloud, as if seeking solace from the air itself. What if her intentions fell flat? What if her audience resented her for thinking they could share stories fraught with emotion and depth? The harshness of those questions echoed against the walls, creeping into her resolve. Shaking herself from the lingering shadows of doubt, Maya resolved to seek guidance from those she admired. The following day, she called Claire, her mentor, a bold and formidable force in the artistic community. Claire's advocacy for authenticity was a lifeline. Reluctantly, Maya shared her vision, exposing her aspirations, and above all, her fears. Maya, every great artist faces those fears. It's part of the process, Claire counseled, her voice imbued with warmth yet underscored by a firm resolve. Your vision is unique. It may seem daunting, but remember that every story shared is a seed planted in hearts that resonate with struggle and joy alike. Maya hung on to Claire's words, letting them sink deep, yet a sliver of doubt remained rooted in her mind. Drawing on her courage, she asked, "But how do you know your ideas matter to others?" Silence stretched between them, the weight of the question lingering in the air. You trust that your story and the stories you invite will grow a community that reflects the struggle, hope, and triumph in each person's journey. The connections will surprise you. The conversation ignited an ember within Maya, yet it didn't completely extinguish her internal strife. As the event approached, she still grappled with her authority in ushering a wave of personal narratives from others. Would she guide them effectively, or merely flounder as a vessel for their vulnerability? Each sleepless night merged into one another, her journal filling with sketches of potential themes. Topics shifted like changing seasons: betrayal, discovery, resilience. Despite her plans taking shape, the fear always brewed nearby, playing a role of its own in her psyche, a character whispering that she might not be enough. But there was something else beneath that fear, a resilient thread of purpose. Every time she took a step forward, no matter how small, she tucked some of her anxiety away. It occurred to her that perhaps this event wasn't solely for others. It was also a profound journey toward her self-discovery and acceptance. To lead meant to embrace her imperfections, using those as a bridge to others. The night before she would announce the details, Maya felt a cascade of emotions rush over her, a bubbling excitement tempered with an undertow of fear. This was no longer just a plan, it was an invitation to explore deep connections she had spent years avoiding. She stood before the mirror, forcing herself to confront the person staring back. "What if they listen?" she questioned, the quote rolling off her tongue like a spell. In that moment, fear collided with valor, and she felt her heartbeat steady into a rhythm that echoed resolve. As she clicked send on the announcement, emotions amalgamated into a cocktail of hope and dread. With a trembling hand, she sealed her fate, not just as a facilitator but as a storyteller in her own right. Now, it was time to see if others were prepared to share. Tomorrow would reveal the answers, and the question loomed larger than her own doubts. Could she truly be the catalyst for change, not only in others, but within herself as well? The horizon shimmered with potential, each heartbeat punctuating the uncertainty of what lay ahead, and then a sudden thought prickled the back of her mind. What if Sarah, the rival, decided to confront her about this? The tension of that possibility churned in her gut. The challenges of vulnerability were never simple. They were complicated, layered, and each decision felt monumental. What awaited her on the other side of this leap? The dawn broke with a peculiar hush, interrupted only by the soft chirping of birds harmonizing outside Maya's window. Today felt different. It was as if the world had shifted on its axis, ready to unfold new possibilities. Maya thought about her announcement, the virtual ripple it could create among those willing to share their stories. A knot tightened in her stomach at the thought. What if no one responded? What if her call for connection resulted in deafening silence? Despite the promise of a new day, she was consumed by uncertainty as she read through her journal, reflections of her thoughts swirling like leaves caught in an autumn breeze. Each entry was stitched together with moments of hope and trembling insecurities. It became painfully clear that she couldn't escape her emotional landscape. There were valleys of fear to traverse and peaks of determination to scale. Maya knew she needed to prepare for the potential fallout, the side effects of putting herself out there, of inviting others to join her journey of vulnerability. The thought of Sarah lingered, a specter of rivalry that refused to let her breathe without tension. Would Sarah dismiss her attempts as naive? Would her critical gaze pierce through her confidence on that stage? The mental rehearsal played incessantly, warming her cheeks with embarrassment as she pondered the worst possible scenarios. Deep down, though, the urge to step outside of her cocoon grew stronger. She couldn't ignore the internal voice that whispered about the vast horizon of shared experiences, the stories of resilience and survival waiting in the wings. With a shaky breath, Maya allowed a hint of excitement to dance alongside her anxiety. What if she could truly connect with someone? What if her voice could serve as an anchor in someone else's storm? After a hasty breakfast, she flipped through her contact list, glancing at those familiar names she could reach out to for support. Maya paused at Claire's name, tightened her grip on the phone, and dialed. When Claire answered, it was as though a warm light spread through the coldness of her uncertainty. Maya poured out her fears, laying bare the weight of the responsibility she felt. "Maya, you hold more strength than you realize," Claire reminded her gently. "Those stories will flow, and you will guide them. You have an innate ability to create a safe space. Perhaps this is less about being perfect and more about being honest, about showing up with your whole heart, flaws and all." The relief of Claire's encouragement washed over her, yet the weight of her task loomed larger still. This would require more than courage. It demanded the willingness to lay herself bare, to confront her ego and step outside of the narrative she'd crafted in her mind. She looked down at her palms, clenched into fists, as if holding back the tide of doubt that threatened to crash through. After hanging up, Maya took a moment to recalibrate, gathering strength from the surge of confidence that followed Claire's words. She sat at her desk, taking a deep breath, and crafted another message, this time one inviting specific individuals she admired, people who had touched her life in meaningful ways. The urge to connect was greater than her fear. She needed their stories to feel whole, just as they might need hers. With each name she added, Maya felt her heart expand, pushing aside the looming shadows of anxiety. The act of inviting others to share in her journey felt dangerously vulnerable, and yet liberating. Was this the catalyst she needed? As she clicked send once more, her pulse quickened. Each notification that pinged back offered a mixture of thrill and terror. Responses from potential participants welcomed her irrespective of her internal doubts. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing with fire. Understanding that vulnerability required a kind of bravery, she still struggled to fully grasp. Then the picture of Sarah emerged again, her dark hair and piercing eyes swirling in Maya's mind. The fear of confrontation simmered below the surface, teasing her with uncertainty. What if Sarah challenged her on her authority? What if she questioned why Maya dared to assume a role of leadership? In the midst of anticipated joy hung the ominous specter of judgment, the perfect storm brewing at the edges of her newfound courage. The challenges drew closer, promising to test not only her project but her very sense of self. Would this unveiling of her vision strengthen her resolve or fracture her spirit? Maya leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed yet invigorated. Tomorrow would reveal the responses, and her heart thudded fiercely at the thought. The horizon expanded further than she ever dreamed possible, but just as excitement began to bloom, she caught an unsettling thought. What if Sarah decided to come and assert her opinion, challenging Maya directly? With the connection blossoming, another possibility loomed, festering with tension. The real journey was just beginning, and Maya braced for the inevitable storm to come. Maya awoke the next morning with a sharp jangling anxiety coursing through her veins. The sunlight that poured into her room felt different. It was no longer gentle warmth, but an insistent spotlight, illuminating the uncertainty lingering beneath her brave facade. She blinked at the notifications on her phone, a cascade of responses waiting to be read, each one a potential lifeline or a harbinger of vulnerability that could unravel the threads of her confidence. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, she scrolled through the messages, scanning for familiar names. Some were warm and encouraging, while others posed questions that made her heart race. Each response ignited a flicker of hope, but was quickly tempered by the shadows of what Sarah might think, how she might respond. The critical voice in her head threatened to drown out the affirmations that she desperately clung to. As she sipped her coffee, the clinking of the cup against the saucer echoed in the quiet of her apartment, a harsh reminder of the weight of her newfound purpose. But this morning, something palpable shifted within her. The realization that despite her fear, she was becoming a vessel for voices that needed to be heard was exhilarating. She envisioned herself standing on that stage, not alone under Sarah's scrutiny, but at the center of a dynamic exchange, a vibrant tapestry of shared experiences. Maya forced herself to breathe as she established a plan. She would organize her thoughts, create a framework that allowed space for others' voices to resonate. What started as an uncertain outline in her mind began to take shape on paper, each bullet point outlining essential topics, guiding questions, and room for exploration. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about creating a platform for connection. Halfway through drafting her framework, she heard a sharp knock on her door. It interrupted her concentration, heart thumping in her chest, wondering if it was Claire or perhaps someone else, ready to buoy her with further encouragement. Instead, as she opened the door, she was met with Sarah's intense gaze, her presence imposing and charged. "Can we talk?" Sarah asked, the clipped tone of her voice a mixture of challenge and curiosity. Maya hesitated, but realized that confronting Sarah might either fortify her resolve or expose her insecurities. "Sure," she managed, stepping aside. Inside, the air was thick with expectancy. Maya gestured toward the couch, her mind racing. What was Sarah doing here? Did she want to undermine her or challenge her vision? The familiar knot twisted tighter in her stomach, but she reminded herself that this confrontation could be the very catalyst for growth she longed for. The stakes felt monumental, her anxiety swirling like a tempest. "I've seen what you're trying to do, and honestly, I'm curious," Sarah began, her voice sharp yet restrained. "You're putting your neck on the line and inviting people to share their deepest issues. Do you have any idea what that really means? What if it doesn't go the way you envision?" Maya took a steadying breath, the words bubbling within her, a blend of vulnerability and resolve. "I understand the risks, but people need to share their stories. They need to feel seen, just like I do, just like you do." The tension shifted imperceptibly as Sarah observed her, eyebrows arching slightly, an almost imperceptible sign of respect mingling with her skepticism. "It's easy for someone like me to criticize from the sidelines, but leading others, it requires an understanding that goes deeper than you might be ready for." Maya felt a flicker of anger but recognized an opening. "Maybe that's true, but that doesn't mean I won't try. Failure may be a possibility, but so is connection. I want to create something meaningful, don't you?" Sarah's expression softened, and for a moment they were no longer adversaries. Instead, they stood on common ground, their desires masked by layers of past grievances. "I get that," she replied slowly, her voice lower, more earnest. "But we both know it's going to take more than just good intentions. You'll need to be prepared for real fallout." As they spoke, a palpable shift occurred within Maya. Each word exchanged with Sarah challenged not only her ideas, but also her motives and the validity of her vision. The confrontation did not feel like a detour. It felt like a crucible, a necessary fiery trial that could either burn her ambitions to ashes or forge them into something profound. By the time Sarah left, Maya felt a renewed sense of clarity. The confrontation had not only revealed her determination, but also the depth of her purpose. It was a vital lesson in resilience, one she realized she would have to remember as she moved forward. Yet, as she sat down to refine her framework, a new question gnawed at her mind. How could she ensure she was ready to guide others through their vulnerabilities while confronting her own self-doubt? Tomorrow she would have to face not just the audience but her fears, both internal and external. And as the reality of her upcoming endeavor began to solidify, one thought loomed larger than the rest. Could she truly harness the strength of vulnerability and use it to empower not just herself, but others who were unwilling to share? The calendar marked the days with an urgency that felt pressing as another challenge began to take shape on the horizon. Maya spent the next few hours immersed in her framework, the soft tapping of her keyboard punctuating the growing silence of her apartment. Each keystroke reinforced her sense of purpose, forming a tangible structure around her abstract aspirations. Ideas flowed, each more potent than the last. The realization that vulnerability could be a source of strength rather than a weakness began to settle deep within her, an idea both comforting and terrifying. Yet lingering beneath her determination was the gnawing beast of self-doubt. Could she really lead others into the depths of their emotions while she waded through puddles of uncertainty? The conversation with Sarah replayed in her mind, the tension of those moments clingy like a second skin. Sarah's cautionary words echoed louder than compliments. The risk of exposing her own vulnerabilities felt like standing on the precipice of a cliff, the ground softening beneath her. As dusk settled outside, Maya opted for a walk, hoping fresh air might clear the fog clouding her thoughts. She dragged her feet, navigating through the familiar streets awash in warm hues of orange and pink. It was a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. She glanced at shop windows, searching for an escape route from her racing mind. A soft breeze brushed against her skin, an irritating reminder of her restlessness. Amidst the mundane distractions, a question pricked at her consciousness. What if she channeled this vulnerability into a story for herself, a narrative that prepared her for the encounter with others? The art of storytelling had always intrigued her, and perhaps it held the key to unlocking her own armor of self-protection. She hastened her pace toward the local cafe where she often sought solace. Losing herself in the bustle of the crowd, she nestled in a corner table, the comforting scent of coffee wafting around her. With fresh paper and a pen in hand, she began scribbling down raw thoughts, moments that defined her struggles and triumphs, key memories that shaped her understanding of vulnerability. The initial chaos of her mind transformed into structured stories, the ink gliding freely across the page. Surprisingly, as she delved deeper, layers of her past began to resurface, those shadowy experiences she lost in the mundane shuffle of life. She recalled the day her childhood friend had confided in her about the abuse at home, how the sheer act of listening had eased that friend's pain and reinforced her own resolve. The emotional palette of her stories now formed vibrant colors, rich with authenticity. Each account connected her fears to the underlying strength woven into her fabric. As she immersed herself in writing, the initial hesitance began to fade, replaced by electric motivation. Every anecdote could resonate with someone else. Stories of heartbreak, struggle, joy, and connection. The idea of creating space for others felt less like a burden and more of a privilege, a sacred trust bestowed upon her. But as night draped its cloak around the cafe, another wave of anxiety surged. Doubts tightened in her chest. What if her stories weren't enough? What if no one connected with her experiences? How would she ensure that her right to share was justified? Each question felt like a pulsating heartbeat in an empty room, echoing her inherent fears until they became overpowering. Maya rubbed her temples and closed her eyes, seeking clarity as the barista collected empty mugs nearby. She needed to confront these shadows head-on. It was time to shift her focus. It wasn't about crafting a perfect narrative. It was about being real, raw, and human. Embracing vulnerability wasn't just for others, it was for herself, to strip away the layers hiding her authentic voice. Determined, she packed her belongings and left the cafe, mind racing with possibilities. She would prepare by reaching out to others before the main event, inviting them to share their stories, planting the seeds of connection in her community. Tomorrow, she would take that first step, and with it, face the burgeoning sense of dread mingled with anticipation. But one nagging thought lingered. Could she genuinely carry the weight of her own vulnerabilities? Her own stories would unravel in the process, and while she embraced that exhilarating prospect, it beckoned her toward an impending truth. The time had come to confront not just the narratives of others, but the unspoken chapters of her own life. With every decision involved in that journey, she would have to navigate the fine line between strength and fragility. Would she find the courage to face the story she had yet to tell, to expose herself fully for the sake of connection? Or would the discomfort pull her back, far away from the empowerment she desperately sought? As she stepped into the night, a sense of urgency ignited within her. A journey of personal revelation awaited, yet a daunting challenge loomed ahead. Maya woke with the sun casting golden rays across her bedroom, filling the space with warmth and a new sense of purpose. Today was the day of her open mic event, a culmination of courage, fear, and the undeniable human need for connection. Her heart raced with anticipation, the echoes of potential stories swirling in her mind, spurring her on. Sipping a cup of coffee, she mulled over her notes. The framework she had painstakingly crafted transformed from a simple set of guidelines into an exquisite tapestry awaiting to be woven with shared experiences. The realization struck her. This undertaking transcended her personal growth. It represented a collective exploration of identity, resilience, and truth. Each participant would unfurl a piece of themselves, and in that act, affirm their own worth. As the hours unfurled, Maya busied herself with last-minute preparations, adjusting seating arrangements and setting up a small microphone on stage. The cozy atmosphere of the venue resonated with excitement as friends and strangers trickled in, each person carrying their own stories, their own burdens cloaked beneath casual smiles. A part of her worried. What if no one spoke? What if silence loomed over her, crushing her dreams before they fully realized? Yet, as she locked eyes with familiar faces, a surge of confidence ensued. When the time arrived, Maya stood behind the microphone, nerves swirling inside her, fluttering like the pages of a well-loved book. She cleared her throat, readying herself for the brave moment of revealing her intentions. As she spoke, her voice wavered slightly, but her message remained steadfast. Thank you all for being here. This is a space for vulnerability, a place where we can share our stories without judgment. I invite you to step forward, to reclaim your truth. Just as I'm reclaiming mine through this journey. Maya felt a wave of solidarity wash over her. Each word spoken was not just directed toward her audience, but was an invitation to herself, a reminder that growth begins outside one's comfort zone. The first volunteer stepped forward, a woman from her history class, who shared a poignant story about rediscovering her identity after a long struggle with familial expectations. The authenticity in how she expressed herself resonated through the room, igniting a chain reaction. Voices followed, echoes of pain, joy, lessons learned, shared experiences. It all became interwoven into the fabric of their gathering. As Maya listened, tears pricked her eyes. The stories unfolded layers she hadn't expected. The narratives shared became mirrors reflecting each participant's vulnerability and strength. Amidst the flow of tales, she felt empowered by their courage. They were not just presenting. A symbiotic connection emerged, uniting them in their collective human experience. When it was her turn to finally speak, a deep sense of calm washed over her. Drawing strength from the accounts she'd listened to, she bared her own story, the struggles, the insights, and the defining moments that shaped her identity. The fears dissipated as she realized this space welcomed her authenticity. Each word felt like a step toward healing, a proclamation of her right to tell her story. With the audience engaged, eager to lean into every word, Maya concluded her presentation with a profound realization. Vulnerability was not a burden, but rather an anchor connecting individuals through shared pain and joy. The applause and appreciation enveloping her signified not just approval, but acknowledgement of their collective experience. As the event came to a close, Maya felt an overwhelming gratitude for every voice, every story, and every moment of shared authenticity. She stood among her peers, who now felt like comrades on this journey of transformation, their stories weaving together an intricate quilt of resilience. The catharsis in the room reverberated long after the applause dwindled, and Maya recognized she had not merely led a gathering, she had fostered a community. Leaving the venue, her heart swelled with satisfaction. A deep sense of fulfillment coursed through her veins. She had not only shared her truth, but brought her fears out of the shadows. The best part, she had embraced the uncertainty within, using it as a bridge rather than a barrier. This experience anchored her into a new perspective. Connection rose from shared vulnerability, and therein lay the true essence of community. With every step toward home, Maya felt fortified by the journeys shared that night. She had not erased the shadows of her past, but she had shown they could coexist with light, illuminating the beauty found in authenticity. Ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, she vowed to continue nurturing the community born from that evening, a group rooted in shared stories, resilience, and empathy. In this moment, she no longer felt as if she were on the edge of a precipice. Instead, she stood firmly on the ground of newfound confidence. The challenge ahead would come, perhaps from Sarah or new avenues of uncertainty. But now Maya knew she could shoulder those moments with grace. As she stepped through her front door, a warm wind welcomed her. Filled with gratitude and ambition, she whispered a promise to herself. She would embrace the unfolding journey ahead with an open heart, guided by the belief that every story mattered, even her own. Now was the time to share this narrative with the world, her courage, her resolve, her transformation. If you resonate with tales of personal triumph over adversity, you need to subscribe now to our channel for more exclusive emotional stories. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. Leave a like now to help our algorithm spread these important messages. We want to hear from you. Comment with your reactions and theories about Maya's journey. And don't forget to share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to experience this powerful conclusion. Your actions drive our mission of connection and empowerment.